Good morning. We will dispense with the routine announcements this morning so that we have more time to worship. As a reminder, silence your phones, enjoy coffee hour if this is your first time here. Coffee hour is on us today. And at 12 p.m., join Betty Lacombe. Thank you, Betty. For the Sunday lunch bunch at the Desert Pines Golf Club, where we meet to help solve the world's problems. Members and guests are welcome. Please see Betty for more information. Today's talk may be a difficult journey for some and easier for others. The service will be a pilgrimage, if you will, to a very dark place in our nation's history. A history that we are still living in today. This is one of those services where you may learn something about yourself or take away some knowledge that you did not have before. It is not a feel-good service. It is a service of penance. When we sing the songs, please try to sing them from the perspective of the oppressed. All of the songs are worthy, but please consider the words as you sing them and imagine how an oppressed person would feel. Let's get started with the singing, ringing of the worship bell. There's a bell. Yes, I know, but there's tons of bells. There are bells everywhere. And we'll be lighting the chalice. When we gather together, we light the chalice, a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Hey, I'm glad you guys are all eager. The chalice reminds us that we are connected to a much larger religious tradition that stretches out of the past, reaches around the world, and leans into our shared future. Now, join with me. We light this chalice as a reminder that together we are a beacon in the desert. May its light lead the way to love, acceptance, and justice as we strive for personal and societal transformation. And now please rise in body or spirit to sing our first song, There is a River Flowing in My Soul. It's hymn number 107 in the Teal hymn.
It ought to be on, yes. So it's great that you'll be following along for the notes in the hymnal, but this hymn and also throughout the rest of the service, we will have additional or different verses. So please cast your mind over to the screen to get the correct verses that we up here will be singing.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in
Good morning. As you see in the order of service, today's service is going to be a little different. I will be interspersing this service with little talks about my experience on a pilgrimage I did this last fall. This way I can emphasize what I felt was important, and you will have time to reflect on what I said. So let's begin with the first talk, the introduction. What is a pilgrimage? When I was growing up, even in a UU environment, I was associated with those darn pilgrims that came over from England. As I grew older, I began to associate it with the Crusaders, who, in the Middle Ages, who tried to regain Christendom over the Holy Lands. And as I became older, I discovered that pilgrimages are usually associated with a religious or spiritual travel. I remember having conversations with a coworker from Iran who told me that Islamic pilgrimages to the Hajj every year. I then also discovered other places that pilgrims go to visit, like the Vatican, to see the Pope, the Middle East, to see and experience the sites of Palestine, Lebanon, and Israel and Jordan. There are Buddhist pilgrimages to shrines located on an island in Japan, and Hindus go on pilgrimages to bathe in a specific spot on the river Ganges. What do all these pilgrimages have in common? Is that they has traveled to a specific place where spiritual expressions are made, rituals take place, and something deeper is learned in the person participating in the pilgrimage. During a pilgrimage, the person traveling is immersed in the experience and does not communicate with the outside world, except for the day we now have social media. So in spring last year, bored out of my mind, cooped up in my house and not willing to travel too far, I was cruising the internet looking and expanding on my thoughts of our sources. There I discovered this group, the Living Legacy Project, who organized trips to Alabama and Mississippi to see important civil rights, and they called it a pilgrimage. I thought, wow, that is a pilgrimage I could do and experience in a spiritual way my UU values. My knowledge of the land, because I'm a West Coaster, ends at the Rockies. I have done some trips with my family in a van around the United States over the other side. And yes, that was much similar to Chevy Chase's vacation. A couple of trips I did to Washington, D.C., Atlanta, San Antonio for business conventions, and a wonderful trip with my dad across this nation on Amtrak to Baltimore and Boston with a day in Chicago. I love travel, and having been pent up here in Las Vegas for 2 years because of that darn COVID, I had the travel bug bad. And decided that this is where I would go for my first plane trip after COVID. I kept checking every week to see if they had opened up registration. I was sure it was going to fill fast because I'm sure there were other people out there like me who wanted to travel. And I did not want to miss out on this. As soon as registration opened, I signed up, and little did I know what I was getting myself into.
The Unitarian Universalist congregation of Las Vegas is situated on the traditional homelands of the Nuwuvi Southern Paiute people. We are grateful for the land itself, for those who have stewarded it for generations, and for the opportunity to worship, learn, work, grow, and be in community with this land and its peoples. We encourage everyone present here to engage in continued learning about the indigenous peoples who work and live on this land since time immemorial, including the Las Vegas Paiute tribe and the Moapa Band of Paiutes, and about the historical and present realities of colonialism. It is important to recognize and appreciate the use of Southern Paiute land as part of our mission to be a welcoming and inclusive place for worship, spiritual enrichment, and exploration within the community. Here are some suggested learning. Did you know that saguaro cacti have edible fruit? I do, but I lived in Tucson. They're called the truffle of the desert by the Tohono O'odham and have been harvested every summer for hundreds of years. Also, Nevada has at least has at least two Native American leaders. Consider learning about the history of one of them, Sarah Winnemucca, a Paiute from northern Nevada. We'll be reading chapters of her autobiography and having monthly discussions from March to June.
Now, this pilgrimage was going to start in Memphis, Tennessee, then travel by bus to spend 3 days in Jackson, Mississippi, and then return back to Memphis. With the peak of COVID during the summer and the issues with the water system in Jackson that we all know about, I was not sure if we were going to go or not. I was holding my breath anxiously over those summer months, waiting for the days to pass so that I was sure that the trip was on and I could book my flights. When I got the email confirming the trip was on, I requested that time off, booked my flights, and started to prepare. I purchased some books that were recommended and watched some great PBS documentary, Eyes on the Prize, to familiarize myself about the history of that area. I was finishing reading the book, The Blood of Emmett Till, as I was starting the trip. I packed a few things I needed, got a good night's sleep, and then when I woke up in the morning, I found out that my route to airport was closed because of a fatal accident along I-15, and I no longer had TSA pre-check. Man, how long was it going to take me to get to the airport and through security? At least I didn't have a dark 30 flight. 2 hours should be enough, right? Well, I booked a lift and waited for the pickup. They said it was 45 minutes to the airport. Plenty of time, but it took twice as long. I arrived with less than 30 minutes to spare, and I was hoping TSA would be short. I sprinted out of the ride into security, worried I was going to miss my flight. I then sprinted up the D gate stairs after the tram ride and made it to the gate on time. All the way thinking, I am glad I'm in really good shape, reasonably good shape, as I boarded the plane, flew over my house on my way to Memphis, landed in Memphis in shorts and a polo in the dark to 45-degree weather. I had to wait a while for the shuttle to go by. Boy, did I feel like a tourist. What a start to the trip. The next morning I slept in, got up early for me, jet lag of course, and decided to take in the sights of Memphis before I met the group in the evening to start the pilgrimage. The first site I traveled to was a mansion built on the then outskirts of Memphis. It's called the Bergtholdt Mansion. Before the Civil War, Bergtholdt owned this Memphis stockyard and had only 2 slaves. What was intriguing was that they were the only 2 slaves he ever owned. He was a German immigrant, and the house was built in such a way that could have been a station for the Underground Railroad. It was on the outskirts of town at the time and close to the Mississippi River. His family supposedly would harbor the escapees in their basement until a boat would be able to pick them up and take them up north. He is also reported to have claimed his 2 slaves ran away after they reached Canada. Today it is a museum about the Underground Railroad. What surprised me about this museum was that when other visitors and I were looking at a drawing of a slave ship was loaded, I overheard them saying, "I did not know they stacked them like that on those ships." And I go, my thought was, how do you think they were treated in transit? I bit my lip and I did not say that. But I was amazed that somebody would actually think that they actually traveled in luxury. Out front, the historical marker has a statement. Folklore persists. This was a way station on the Underground Railroad. A part of me wanted to ask the historian who wrote that, is there concrete proof that it was not a way station? Here's a prime example of history being written by those who can. After the brief visit, I met the rest of the group for a Mississippi pilgrimage. Being a humanist, I have some trouble saying one word, and only do so if necessary. Our next song will contain that word. But more importantly, it is a historic song that contains code words about escaping slavery. See me after the service if you want more information about it. Now please rise in body or spirit as we sing number 210 in the Great Hymnal. But please follow the words on the screen.
children wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the waters. See that band all dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the waters. It looks like a band that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the waters. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the waters. Look over yonder, what do you see? God's gonna trouble the waters. The Holy Ghost is coming for me. God's gonna trouble the waters. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
We live out our principles within a living tradition of wisdom and spirituality, drawn from sources as diverse as science, poetry, scripture, and personal experience. These are the 6 sources our congregations affirm and promote.
Number 1, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the focus which create and uphold life.
Words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love.
Wisdom of the world's religions, which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life.
Jewish and Christian teachings which call on us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves.
Humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit.
Spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature.
History. What is it? But a perspective. Earlier I said from this spot here, is it a ruin or an abandoned dwelling? That first day, we boarded the bus in the morning and took in the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel. We also had a nice lunch downtown in a diner in Memphis. When we started our travels through the Mississippi Delta, whenever I heard before I got there of the Mississippi Delta, I thought of the great blues artists that were located, and that was also located closer to New Orleans, where the Mississippi flows into the ocean. Yes, my gross geography ends at the Rockies. The Mississippi Delta was not the delta I expected. It is a large floodplain where the Yazoo and Mississippi rivers meet, 300 miles upstream from New Orleans. And it is flat. Our first stop was a museum about Emmett Till, who was murdered in August of 1955. When I stepped off the bus, the humidity, smells, and sights took me right back to the 10 years I spent in Merced, California. The land was so flat, I could almost see the curvature of the earth on top of the mature cotton plants, with that distinct fall odor of what I think is cotton defoliant hanging in the air. At the museum, we listened to the mayor of Glendora, Johnny B. Thomas. Like most of the histories in today's talk, I'm not going to go into details about the indisputable facts. There are a number of great books and videos out there about that you can find or that I can refer you to. Instead, I will lift up some things that I learned during my visits. Here in Glendora, the mayor was the son of one of the men who worked for the white men who killed Emmett Till. While his father never said to the community that he was involved, there were circumstances that would lead you to believe that the father was involved. Keeping quiet was part of the culture. Those who spoke up would be lynched. If you were to speak up, you had to be prepared. You needed security and maybe even need to leave home to another place after you spoke. I also learned that the body was dumped, not in the river, but in a bayou off the river that ran by the barn where the murder took place and floated for 3 days to the point where the body was retrieved 3 miles downstream. I also learned about Emmett's grandfather, Mose Wright. During the trial in September of that year, Mose and another black man identified the defendants in open court as murderers of Emmett. This was the first time in Mississippi that a black man accused a white person of murder in a court. Both had the courage to make the accusations and then had to leave their homes in Mississippi. There is a picture of Mose Wright at the moment he was accusing the murderers. It was captured by a photographer against the direction of the judge. Good trouble. The picture gives me chills when I look at it, even today, and I have it in a book that I brought. Our next stop was Medgar Evers' home in Jackson, Mississippi. The home is now part of the National Park Service. It was built in a black-only subdivision of Jackson and had some custom security features such as no front door. As many of you know, Medgar was an insurance salesman who was also an activist and organizer. In 1956, his assassin was hiding in the bushes across the street and murdered Medgar as he was unloading event t-shirts from his car, something that almost every organizer does in their life. What I want to share about Medgar's murder is his biography. He was born and grew up in Mississippi. In 1943, he joined the U.S. Army and was sent overseas to fight in the European theater and was involved in the landing of Normandy. He left the Army in 1945 as a sergeant. Traveling overseas gave Medgar and his peers a different view of the world, as travel does. A world with no Jim Crow. When they returned from the war, they began the fight for civil rights. Why fight against fascism only to return to the U.S. to find that what you were fighting against was right here? They discovered that there was no reason that segregation should continue and that democracy for all must happen now, not in some promised future. Medgar was assassinated in June 1963, and his murderer was tried both in February and April of 1964, and both ended in a hung verdict. Even though both juries were all white. The reason that the jurors were all white was because the jurors were selected from the mostly white voter registration rolls, as it was nearly impossible for a black person to become registered to vote. It was not until 1994 when the third trial jury of 8 blacks and 4 whites found the murderer guilty. After being free for nearly 30 years, the murderer died in prison 7 years later. Now, before we start this next song, I want to give you some perspective. Songs are meant to lift spirits and tell a story. The first song we sang the second song we sang, Wade in the Water, is about the Underground Railroad. And like I said, sometimes the verses are code words about the dangers on the trail. The next song we will sing is not meant to be sung by most of us here in the congregation, but I included it anyway to create a small bit of feeling of what music can do. It can lift your spirits and bring hope, even in the darkest hour. This song is about people taking action to sit at a table. It is not about you sitting at a table. While you sing this song, think about how you would feel to be able to sit at the table and what action you will take to make sure that all are welcome to sit at the welcome table. Now, please rise in body or spirit as we sing, I'm going to sit at the welcome table. And I believe this is the one that we're going to sing the first verse first.
Yeah,
so you can get the tune. So you can get the tune. And follow the words on the screen. Not the words and not the tune in the screen either. So you'll see.
Yes, so to repeat that, we will be singing the first verse one time alone, and then we'll all join in together repeating that first verse.
I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm
Now everybody.
I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. I'm gonna walk the streets of glory. I'm gonna walk the streets of glory one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna walk the streets of glory. Gonna walk the streets of glory one of these days. I'm gonna spread the word of freedom. I'm gonna spread the word of freedom one of these days. Hallelujah. I'm gonna spread the word of freedom. Gonna spread the word of freedom one of these days.
We will now ground ourselves in the present and honor those with whom we will share this time. I invite you to settle into your seat. Feel the chair holding your body. Imagine the earth holding you. Take in a comfortable breath. Exhale. Let the joy and despair and the frustration and the satisfaction of the week trickle off your shoulders. Let it collect in your hands. Set them down, not ignored or abandoned. They will join with you at the rest of your journey today, but let them rest. Allow yourself to be present in this space. Please find a way to acknowledge those with whom we share this time together. You might smile or place your hand over your heart or give a small wave. I invite you now to return to the larger circle. If you have someone you would like to be held up and they're on Zoom, please add them. Lost my place. Please add them to the chat. And today we hold up Madonna Pence and Kevin Kuzniak. Are there any in the chat?
We have Diane Lunsford and Al and Joni.
May we hold all those displaced or alone, and all these names spoken here, and all those held in the silence of our hearts in love and compassion.
I was not going to have a prayer in this part of the service, but because of the UU 30 Days of Love campaign, this past week was called to reflect on decriminalization. And the prayer was one of the offerings that they had there. I strongly encourage you all to visit 30 Days of Love and check out their 30 Days of Love campaign. Side with Love and their 30 Days of Love campaign. And I found this prayer to be appropriate to this week's service, so I added it in. This is called an abolition prayer by Reverend Jason Leiden. Beloved friends, I want to invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer. Let us prepare our prayer time by breathing together. As you breathe, I want you to feel the power of your body, making tight fists with your hands, and feel the muscles as they become taut, and then relax them. Raise your shoulders up to your ears, feeling your body to extending, and then relax. Your body's a blessing. Breathe. Loving Divine, we begin in thanks thankful for the breath in our lungs, the beauty of our earth, and the strength of our community. We are praying together in the spirit of abolition, in the vision of those who have come before us, with our heart's attention to liberation. Our prayer is in our actions. Our prayer is not restraint theology. Our prayer is in the communities that we build up. Our prayer is in open doors that lead to sanctuaries where you can find respite, renewal, and rejuvenation. This is our prayer. This is our Unitarian Universalism. As Unitarian Universalists, we usually do not pray about hell. We know that there is no hell to fear after death. During this life, we share, though, there is much hell to overcome. Hell that must be eradicated. Hell that our faith demands we abolish. Each time a family member mourns their loved one gunned down by the police, hell is real. Each time a prisoner is strip searched before and after a visit, hell is real. Each time bail is set so high that freedom is impossible to find, hell is real. Each time someone spends 23 hours locked in a cell, hell is real. When phone calls from prison cost $25 for just 15 minutes, hell is real. Our Universalist ancestors teach us that punishment does not transform the soul after death, and yet punishment culture permeates our world and creates hell right here, after hell, right here on earth. Hells may be built up all around us, but our faith teaches us that we can and we must abolish every hell that people are living in. We do not pray for abolition, beloveds. Abolition is our prayer. We make this prayer real each time we whittle away at that which denies life. We make this prayer real when we dismantle anti-blackness. We make this prayer real when we build up alternatives to policing. We make this prayer real when we harness the power of the divine, however it is named, God, Gaia, or our human family, and give life to something new. You are the prayer. I am the prayer. We are the prayer. And we are answering it even as we articulate it. However you name the holy, wherever you feel the greatest connection to love, may we each have the strength to embrace this power and go about building the beloved community, the kingdom of heaven right here, right now. As we pray, there are no kings for us to fear or take down, but kin with whom we can organize, mobilize, dance, eat, play, cry, nourish, and nurture. Let us pray knowing the wisdom of June Jordan taught us. We are indeed the ones that we have been waiting for. Let the people say, Amen, and blessed be. Now we will sing Spirit of Life, number 123 in the Great Hymnal.
Spirit of life, come unto thee. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice, roots holding close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Talk 3, Action. The murders of Emmett Till and Medgar Evers with the acquittal of their perpetrators, led to an organizing of blacks across the South. Organizing such as the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the Conference on Racial Equality, called CORE, were organizing blacks and others throughout the South. As the violence grew, they began to bring Northerns in to challenge the Southern establishment. Known as freedom rides, they served a purpose not only to challenge segregation on interstate buses, but also set up schools across to educate folks on how to register to vote and other basic education that was not being taught in the segregated sharecropper schools. One of the freedom schools was built at Mount Zion Methodist Church, just outside Philadelphia, Mississippi. When the Klan heard that this was happening, they set up a roadblock at night to intimidate and beat the folks leaving the church and driving home. After the church was empty, the Klan burned it down. Since the local sheriff was not going to investigate, 3 men from CORE began to get affidavits from those who were beaten. Their names were Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwimmer, both from New York, and a local black man named James Chaney from Meridian, Mississippi. Andrew and Michael were both Jewish, and James was black. The story of how they were captured and lynched is well known, and I'm not going to go into that here. Instead, I want to share with you a few things that I learned and observed at this site. First, the folks who were being interviewed were beaten by the Klan to find out where the 3 men were. Second, both Andrew and Michael were killed with a single gunshot. James, on the other hand, was killed later with evidence of being tortured, mutilated, and buried alive. All were buried under 15 feet of earth. Third, these murders took place on Father's Day, 1964. Fourth, there was such a fear that James' grave would draw attention that he had to be buried away from his family. Michael's parents wanted to bury him next to James, but could not because of segregation laws prohibiting that. Andrew and Michael are buried in New York City. We then visited James's grave and heard from his daughter, who was not yet born when he was murdered. She has a beautiful story, too, about how she learned that her father was James and the steps her family took to protect her. She is now back in Mississippi, taking up the fight where James left off. Another person I want to lift up is Hezekiah Watkins of Jackson, Mississippi. He was one of the youngest freedom riders at age 13. He and his friend were poking around the bus station to find out what was happening with these freedom riders who were coming to town. His friend pushed him, like many adolescent boys do, into the white space of the Jackson bus station. He was arrested and sent to Parchman Penitentiary. And not just the general part of that penitentiary, he was sent to death row, where he spent 5 days. This was the first of many arrests of civil disobedience for him. He was sent there because he was asked, "Where were you born, son?" And he said, I was born in Minnesota or Wisconsin, but he lived in Jackson. He tells a great story, a beautiful part of one of the most interesting museums I have ever seen. It is one of the 2 museums at the 2 Mississippi museums. The entire museum is dedicated to the civil rights movement in Mississippi. There I learned that the civil rights movement was striving for equality and justice. Justice for black people is not equal. Blacks could be lynched, which is just another way of saying executed without a trial, just for looking the wrong way. These lynchings were also public. The fact that both local and visiting protesters knew that their lives were on the line shook me to the core. Would you be able to protest if you knew that a consequence could be the end of your life? And that this went on, and systemic racism is still present today. But we can learn from these experiences and move that arc of the moral universe towards justice. What gave me a glimmer of hope in the depth of this despair was to see the young students from diverse backgrounds, both black and white, walking through the museum that day and then sitting and listening to Hezekiah's story. That gave me hope that the new generation may learn something from the old generation. Now, as you know, it's the pledge drive season, and during these weeks, we'll invite members of the congregation to come forward and talk about why they love UUCLV. Our first speaker is Donna Mead. Would you come forward?
Morning, everyone. Good morning. So, yeah, Hillary asked me to do this on Thursday or Friday. I have not prepared a long speech. I was born and raised in South Carolina, so I saw a lot of things firsthand, and my family was Southern Baptist, but it never, ever seemed right to me. I used to question that faith a lot and got very benign answers and was told just that you were simply supposed to have faith, which I did not have. So I did not attend church. And actually the word church for a long time became very negative for me. To me, it meant people who were very short-sighted at the least, downright racist at the most, and it was condoned, in my opinion. And so I could not abide by being in a group of people like that. The one thing I did think highly of was their community. Within their own group, they were great. Took care of each other, took care of, people who were sick, if you were hungry, all those kinds of things. And to me, that's what church should have been. But they never practiced what they preached when it came to other people. So I moved out west and actually started to find people who believed the same things I did. And I started hearing about the UU when I joined the pagan community here in Las Vegas. They used to have lots of events here. Pagan Pride Day specifically was one of the first times I ever came here. And I thought how strange it was that a church was allowing pagan groups to hold events in their space. That would never happen back home, even now. And so I wanted to find out more about it. And when the opportunity arose to perhaps start a Cubs group here, I was hesitant at first because, again, it was church. But then I started coming to services last year, and I've very much enjoyed my time here. I find that community, that for people who believe the same things as I do. And like the song you wrote, but that you played earlier, I was like, you said, put yourself in those people's shoes. And I was actually starting to cry then. Anyway, so I decided to become a member of the UU because I want to have this community. And since I've been here, I do hear from time to time complaints about the building or the grounds or such things, and those things could easily be made better if those who are able make their pledges. And I have done so myself and will continue to do so. And even if you can't pledge money, definitely volunteering could help. So many things around here that need to be done. And we could have the nicer features of a lot of other churches if everybody comes together and does them. So I hope that we have several new people here today. Welcome, by the way. So glad to see you. And we hope you'll continue to come back and find your own community here. Because while most churches you go to, we are this church. And if we want it to be better, it's completely up to us. Thank you.
We gather as a religious community to give each one of us a place where we can do the work of many. The offering supports the mission of the congregation to be a beacon of love and justice in the desert, and supports local organizations working to make our community a better place for all. The offering this month is shared with the Silena Childhood Diabetes Fund. The fund assists Southern Nevada families with costs not covered by insurance, including lancets, needles, copays, and medication for the treatment of type 1 diabetes. The link to donate will be in the chat or on Zoom, and there are boxes actually, there's not boxes in the back of the sanctuary. I'm going to change that part of the script. The baskets are coming around. And now, please join me. With gratitude for the abundance in our own lives, we give for the life of this congregation and the benefits of the larger community. As the plates are being passed around today, let's try something different. Walking and chewing gum at the same time, as our fearless leader today likes to say. Let's sing our next song as the plates go around. Please ride and body your spirit to sing Woke Up This Morning. While it is in the hymnal today, the words will be different and on the screen.
I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. There's nothing wrong with my mind stayed on freedom. Oh, there ain't nothing wrong with keeping my mind stayed on freedom. There ain't nothing wrong with mine stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Talk number 4, the future. Now, if I was to stop right here, I think all of you would walk out with a feeling down and out. There's nothing in this world we can do to battle the oppression. There is no hope. Pilgrimages are supposed to bring you down to the depths of despair. For it is in those depths that hope springs. There is hope out there, and I saw it. I saw it with the Rosenwald schools. These schools were funded by a Jewish son of German Jewish immigrants who became a businessman in New York and Chicago. He was a major supplier, turned investor, and then president of this little company. It was known as Sears Roebuck. To make a long story short, because we're running out of time, the Rosenwald family created a fund that built over 5,000 schools in 15 southern states, stretching from the rural areas of Maryland down to Texas. These schools were built in the 1920s and 30s to educate black students living in the rural South. Many ran until the 1970s when desegregation took place. This opportunity for education was a very small step in the right direction. There are also the historically black universities. The pilgrimage visited Tougaloo College, where the vice president of academic affairs talked about the history of Tougaloo College inside the college chapel. The college was built upon a 500-acre plantation and was founded during Reconstruction by the American Ministerial Association. The college is associated with the United Church of Christ and the Christian Church. She had a daughter, and she and her daughter closed the talk by singing the Tougaloo's alma mater. Being on campus and seeing the students, the next generation of activists, gave me hope. Then there are the political leaders. On the first night, we heard from Marquita Bradshaw. She was the first black woman from either party to be nominated for a statewide race in Tennessee. She was the candidate for Senate in 2020. While she lost the race, she inspired others to run, believe it or not. In 2022, Cherry Beasley ran for North Carolina, Val Demings in Florida, and Natalie James in Arkansas, all three black women. Finally, family gives me hope. The common thread through each of these experiences during the time that I spent back there was family. Whether it was the mother-daughter at Tougaloo, the daughter of James Chaney with her grandson, Jewel Rush McDonald talking about what happened to her family on the night of the church burning, or seeing 5 generations of the Dahmers still making a statement on who to vote for. You remember that was what I talked about previously. All of these experiences gave me hope and inspire me to dig deeper into my heart and open my mind and call out injustice wherever I see it. So let's close this service out with a little bit of up, with joy and hope in our hearts as we rise in body or spirit and sing This Little Light of Mine, number 118 in the Gray Hymnal. But the words will be up here.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Always in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Always in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Always in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. We got the light of freedom, we're gonna let it shine. We got the light of freedom, we're gonna let it shine. We got the light of freedom, we're gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Woohoo! All right, what did I leave out? Oh boy. That long walk through Denver, the hotel server laughing about the bartenders, singing a song, Turn Me Around, the exhibits of the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel, Fannie Lou Hamer and the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, citizen councils, COFO, Jackson State killings after Kent State, black lodges, black business areas, and the Mississippi River Cruise, and the other museum of the 2 Mississippi museums. The small but impactful gallery on Beale Street, a fun time on Beale Street, and the poor signage in Denver Airport both ways.
This is their call to action part. Live your values. UUCLV partners with 3 Square Food Pantry to host a monthly food pantry here at the church. Consider showing up here early on the 3rd Saturday of the month. Except for this month, we'll be holding the pantry on the 11th. It's because of President's Day. They actually let their drivers have a weekend off. Very nice of them. If you are unable to participate, consider donating some money to our pantry fund to buy additional food or bring some shelf-stable foods to be used at the next pantry or when someone in need knocks on our door. I always watch for the carton sales. It's a good time to buy. Boxes for donations are in the social hall or mark food pantry on your check. Also, UUA's Side with Love campaign continues with their 30 Days of Love. They are offering resources to our community that we can use, like the prayer read today. This week's theme is healing and decriminalization. These resources can be found on their website, sidewithlove.org.
My hope is that by this time you found something you can take home from my sharing. And if you want to join me on a trip to Alabama or join the Living Legacy Project on some other trip, please see me at the table in the social hall. I'll be there with my tablet, the picture book with that picture, some books that I read, and books that I bought that you can all look at. I will close with a quote from Theodore Parker, not the one you're thinking of. He said that people are not satisfied with any form of government or statute law until it comes up to their sense of justice. So every progressive state revises its statutes from time to time, and each revision comes nearer to the absolute right where human nature demands. May your light shine, be at peace, and take action wherever it can.
Now, please join with me. Release that which was called with love and gratitude, and we extinguish the flame, but not the commitment to being a beacon in the desert. This burns brightly until we gather again. And please take a moment to ruminate on the service and ground yourselves. Thank you for coming. Next week's service is Black History with Benny Wilkins. Please enjoy our coffee hour, and the announcements will continue to roll during our the friendship break. And enjoy the good funky sound.
We will not rest till the storm is over. We will not lay this burden down. We will keep each other strong. We will love and carry on till we stand all together on solid ground. We will not rest till the storm is over.